Yes! Yes! Yes. Probably way too excited for... What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Well, we got engines for days. But most excitingly, we got back the OG. Well, not the OG. That too, Jake's the OG. But we got our main engine back today. We got our 2JZ that was in the BMW. This one's the vvti. And we're finally ready to start putting it back together. And hopefully, by the car god's grace, we'll have this thing ready to go to Streetcar Takeover and finally send this thing down track. But before we do that, as you can see, I've got just a mess everywhere. So I got a little bit of housekeeping to do before I start working on this thing, putting it back together. So we'll take care of that and hopefully we'll have it done now. All right, well, now that's out of the way. It's not perfectly clean, but you know, we got some space to work with now. So moving on to actually working on the engine. We're just gonna start by getting some ATF and cleaning out these cylinder bores. The engine did get clean. That's really the big reason why I was back at the shop. Something I failed to do the first time and the second time that I put this engine together. I never had the oil galley plugs actually pulled and got the oil galleys cleaned out as well. So now we're doing that, so now we've done that, and we're gonna go ahead and start reassembling things, starting with cleaning out those boards again. I wish I had somebody here to help me with this right now so I could show you guys the inside of the cylinders so you can see why it's important to actually get through there and wipe the cylinder walls down versus just throwing stuff in there. There's actually pretty good clumps of debris now just from wiping my hand around there and letting that ATF kind of collect it up and ball it up. Stuff that you couldn't really see just looking down through it at first, but now that it's all been kind of like glued together, it's clearly visible. You know what? Give me a second, maybe I'll let you guys kind of see what I'm talking about. Right, so there's the two clean ones already. This one, can't really tell, there's some clumps down in there. More. And so this camera's not really doing it justice, but they're there. Alright guys, so here's where we're at. We got these cylinders kind of cleaned out a little bit, all the stuff that was left over from the machine shop cleaning process and then getting it over here and into the garage. Got that wiped out, went ahead and threw the main bearings back in. Yes, I am still reusing the main bearings just because they were brand new when I just reassembled this engine, and it's got probably less than half an hour of runtime on it. Just trying to diagnose some of the things that were wrong. So we are going to reuse the bearings. They do look fine. Even the machine shop said they were fine to reuse. So that's what we're going to do now. So that's what we did. Now it's on to dropping the crank back into the motor. Again, still stock crank, stock rods, aftermarket Manley pistons. But we'll address that when we get to it. For right now, just dropping the crank back into the motor. So just like always, just going to drop a little bit of assembly lube in here. Just on these bearings, get the bearings kind of set and ready to go. Spread it out. A lot of excess bearings there. Try to get something with the thrust bearing side. That's good enough. Yeah, I did wipe off the crank journals already. Get that sitting. And of course, main caps are all numbered. Number 1, with an arrow that points towards the front of the engine. So I'm just going to drop those there. They are numbered 1 at the front, 7 at the rear. And of course, they said the arrows point towards the front of the engine, or where the oil pump would be. I'm going to start dropping in my main caps. So let's start dropping in my main bolts. Now, every other time I've done this, I've always put the main studs in first and then put the caps on. If you're wondering why I did it this way this time, I don't have a real answer for it. This is just how I did it this time. Could it lead to something going wrong? Maybe. I'm not particularly worried about something going wrong by doing it this way. No, not really. And just like with the main bearings, I'm reusing the main studs because they were brand new when I put them in this summer. And, well, again, 30 minutes of run time. And you guys haven't checked lately, the price of ARP studs, especially for a 2J, are not cheap right now. So, with the way my budget is set up, I gotta reuse them. If any of you guys are inventors or engineers, if you design an engine stand for people who are, you know, like 6'3", 6'4", and above, that'd be great. I'd love to test that out for you guys. Yeah, so like I was saying, whatever's not taken care of right there, the actual torque sequence will get it down to just the right torque. So on that note, I gotta go find the torque specs for these again, and come back when it's time to torque them. Alright guys, so I got the torque specs. Unfortunately, they're on my phone, and I need my phone to read off of. And my phone is usually my other camera that gives you the wider angle of what I'm doing. So you guys just got to deal with this for right now. But you'll be able to see the torque sequence that I go through, and it's going to be 3 even passes to 60 foot-pounds, which is super easy. That's just increments of 20. There's 60 right there, and with that, yeah, that should be it for the crankshaft. Everything turns. It's a little stiff, a little sticky, but turns by hand. Good to go. I'm gonna pause right here because I got kids going wild, so I'm gonna take care of that real quick. Alright, now the crank's in, we're going to move on to the pistons. So, one thing that we didn't notice once we pulled the engine apart, if you guys remember back, we had a ton of issue with overpressure and ventilation, crankcase ventilation throughout the life of the car or the engine. A lot of that was due to the block and the bore specifically being so worn out that standard size pistons didn't fit. So we went with these Manley oversized pistons, and they helped out quite a bit. They our crank pressure dropped quite a bit, which we expected would happen. But something we noticed at the machine shop is that there's a small issue with some of the piston rings. So if you look how this piston ring right here turns and rotates throughout it just fine. No issues whatsoever. That's the way it should be. 4 of our pistons like this, no problem at all. Everything rotated smoothly as it should be. The issue is this right here. If you look, this one doesn't want to rotate. It's kind of, I don't know if I'll focus in here on the piston itself, but it has to actually come out of the ring groove to get it to actually work. And the reason is there is the slightest of burrs on the edge of the piston here, and the camera's just not going to pick it up. It's got the auto tracking thing on it, and it's picking up my face instead of the camera. And the camera's just not going to pick it up. It's got the auto track thing, and it's picking up my face, unfortunately, when the piston is what's clearly much more interesting in this situation. But I've got 2 pistons like that. This one's really, really bad. It doesn't even want to budge. And ultimately what that means is our top piston ring wasn't actually expanding. So what we're going to do now is pop these 2 piston rings off, give it a good filing. I'm going to use a points file and just knock it down and make sure that, no more burrs. make sure that it worked, I'm going to push these rings in there. And it should still spin freely, no matter how tight I pushed them in there. And they do. So that one's good. On to the next one. Yeah. All right, so all of those are good. I guess the next thing left is just to clean these rod journals and, well, drop the piston assemblies in. All right, so we did take a bit of a slight break. And by slight break, I mean it's a new day. Last night I was able to get 4 of the 6 pistons in. I didn't show all of it just because it's as simple as putting pistons in. I've done it on this engine several times now. You see me do it on the Cleveland. You've seen me do it on the LS. One thing I can't say enough of, like always, is these Wiseco piston ring compressors. That's all it is, just that one little ring. And it makes getting the pistons through just way more easier. They're cut to a very specific bore. This one's 86.5 millimeters, just because I've got those oversized pistons in there. I've got this one specific to these pistons. I've got one specific to the LS bore, and I've got one specific to the Dodge bore, oddly enough. The only reason I got the one for the Dodge is because it's that much easier than trying to use a ratchet style ring compressor. So no matter how many times I do this or make videos of putting pistons in, I'm always going to take a chance to talk about these piston ring compressors. Completely unsponsored, unsolicited, or anything like that. But for all you guys who are looking to do DIY stuff like this, invest in one of these. They're not that expensive at all. And it's just save yourself the time and the headache. Get something like this and it's super easy. And so one thing I will show is, I don't know if I mentioned it in a previous video or when we switched to the new Manley pistons, but I've always had an issue with the rods on this crank. These rods are from the other motor, just because they're thicker rods. Like I was saying, I was having problems with the pistons, or problems with the rods and the crank not wanting to work properly together. I'd always get stuff binding up, which led to me just kind of reusing some of the bearings instead of using new bearings. So I noticed that I had 2 caps mixed up, and this is from the very first time I took this engine apart, and I didn't know that you couldn't do that. I know, looking back on it now, it was super stupid of me, but just like I didn't know it, I'm sure some of you guys don't know that you can't mix caps on rods. They're cut to be very specific, and they're usually marked to pair them up. So if you look right here, and I hope this camera does it justice, you'll see like a little U on it right there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make sure this camera does it justice. There's a little U right there. And you see it split between the two ends, between the rod and the cap itself. All of the rods have it as marking, a unique marking to them. They'll let you know which cap goes on which rod. I had 2 of these mixed up, and I think that's going to be why I had that binding issue. So I've been throwing in fresh bearings for all of the rods. So far, 4 of the 6 still work. The crank rotates over pretty smooth. See if I can get it on there. Nothing's binding up. So, let me see if I can't keep that streak alive with these last 2 pistons. It'd be nice to catch a break on this and finally get everything in there, fresh new bearings, without problems or hangups this time. So, here's to hoping. Alright, so fresh bearings are in. One thing to note, make sure your oil hole lines up. If you look, see this one's got the hole there, but this got the hole in the bearing for oiling, but it doesn't have a hole in the cap, obviously. Just make sure, no matter what brand of bearings you use, that your oil provision does have an opening and it's not blocked by the bearing itself, or else you're never going to get oil into the bearing or into the journal.
Front goes towards the front. Slip the rings to the compressor, or slip the piston into the compressor. Put it in there. Get the piston seated. Make sure we're lined up. Look at that. Pops right through. Now with a ratchet solid compressor, no way I would have been able to do that. Alright guys, quick break. My wife wants to go open up her Mother's Day present, so we're gonna go do that. Alright, again, 65 foot-pounds. Bam. Alright guys, it's time for the moment of truth. I know I said that the last time, but this time's the real moment of truth. Let's see if this spins over freely. Yes! 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 Probably way too excited for getting pistons in the right way, but you guys don't understand how much this engine has plagued me with not having, not being able to run brand new fresh bearings on it without having the engine binding. And it turned out to be just because I had those two caps, or connecting rod caps, switched backwards. It's amazing I didn't kill this engine the very first time I tried to start it up, to be honest with you. I made a lot of mistakes. So I guess the beauty in having to take this thing out so many times and go back through it is I got a chance to fix all those mistakes that I made before I did serious damage to this engine. So, man, I'm ecstatic. I'm genuinely happy about that. Man, just wanna. Yeah. I can live with that. Ooh, so that's that. I guess the next thing we're gonna have to do is probably throw that rear main seal on, throw that oil pump on. Yeah, we'll do those two. Rear main seal and oil pump. Man, I'm happy that worked. Like, way too happy. It's a good sign.